That's the name of our show.
Hi, everybody. We totally forgot to unmute the mic.
Yes. Is mine working too?
Yeah,
I
yours
can't
is
quite
working
see.
fine.
Okay,
You're
great.
fine.
All right.
We're total noobs at this. And, we sit here and we nervously, get ready to start the show. And we're like, okay, it's like 1 minute to start. What are we going to do? What are we going to do?
Yep.
And here we
we're
are.
Waiting for the credits and all that good stuff. But we're here.
And then I don't unmute the mic.
Yeah.
So, awesome.
And just a reminder, there might be some glitches because that's what happens sometimes with these things.
Yes. And so if we have a situation where the mics pop out, let us know in the chat. And there's Ben. Hi, Ben. Thank you for your loyalty. We'd love to see you. So if anything happens with the mics, please let us know. We are going to start off just by talking about if you're new to Twitch, and we know that some of you are. We know that we get some new people in here once in a while. Mm-hmm. Please follow. Click that follow button. That helps us out a lot.
Yeah.
And also we have an active chat room. Hi, Mom. Nice to see you in there.
Hi, Mom.
As always. Hope you're enjoying down there at the beach.
Yes. I'm a little jealous.
Yeah, I know. Don't say that because she's going to be like, well, you were invited. If we get to 35 followers tonight, we are going to give away a copy of the book we've been reading from, Jerry Saltz's How to Be an Artist. So if you're active in the chat and we hit 35 followers tonight, we will be giving away a copy of this. Mm-hmm. So Dave's still here.
Okay,
thanks,
good.
Dave. Appreciate that. And given all the technical difficulties and issues, I need to open my beer.
Yes, you do.
I think that's really important. So let's jump into talking about the beer.
Go ahead and do that. As you know, we've been trying to correlate the beverages with the artists. And once again, in this last minute pick, we picked an artist who's from New York. So guess what? We're going to do some New York beer again.
Specifically Brooklyn beer.
Specifically Brooklyn.
But not Brooklyn Brewery. And so we have chosen tonight the Grimm Brewing Company, which is located in East Williamsburg. It is run by Joe and Lauren Grimm, who they met in college, actually at Brown University in Providence, Rhode Island, which is where I used to bartend. So I'm excited about that. And I don't think they're watching, of course, but...
Yeah, but that's okay. What you drinking?
I'm drinking Grimm and Kane. Kane is another brewery that they collaborated with on this one. This is called Waffling. And what are you drinking?
Well, I have the same brewery here, and this is called Full Frequency. So if you guys could see it there. It says it's mixed with rhubarb and apricots. I already started because I always pregame a little bit. But this actually reminds me of olives, but it's actually very good. So if you're into olives and stuff, then you're good to go.
Mine is an imperial stout with maple syrup, toasted walnuts, vanilla, and sea salt. And I actually cannot wait to get this one going. So we're going to see how this is. And so we'd like to thank Grimm, not that they had any part in subsidizing our show, but it's a new adventure. This came highly recommended from my local beer guy. Mm-hmm. So thanks to my beer guy. And cheers.
Cheers.
All right. So.
What do you think?
Oh my God.
What's it taste like?
It's like a meal.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it's so full-bodied, and you can taste a little of that sea salt in there.
Ooh.
Oh, it's good.
It tastes like it would be like a chocolate stout.
It's very chocolatey. You can definitely taste the maple syrup.
Woo! Okay. Little bourbon edge there.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it does have a little bit of like a bourbony edge to it.
Yep.
Nice. All right. So, cheers, Ben.
Cheers.
So we've got a few. There's Crazy Goat Woman in the chat. Hi, Crazy Goat Woman. Nice to have you. We got a few things we got to talk about.
We got a couple things to talk about tonight, before we get started. So we mentioned the giveaway. We're trying to get to 35 viewers tonight, 35 followers.
35 followers.
Yep, and then we'll go ahead and give the book away.
Tell your friends.
Tell all your friends. We already mentioned that we kind of veered off the path that we set, but we're all set with that.
We had an issue this week where we had chosen an artist, And, and there's a couple of things we want to talk about with this too. So we chose this artist early in the week, and we spend time, like we've told you before, sort of keeping secret about how we're doing our research. We're not talking to each other because we want the show to be organic. And so we went through our week. Terri was very excited about this artist. I was excited about this artist, but you were definitely more excited than I was.
Very excited about him, yeah.
We're not going to tell you who it was, and here's the reason. Because today, like 4 hours ago, we found out that this person has a pretty serious controversy surrounding them. Yeah. Not a funny one. Politically. And they lost their job over this thing.
Yes, because he had posted something on social media, and then we kind of had that dilemma, like, what do we do with this? So Todd decided to scrap it at the last moment, and I think that was a good idea.
Yeah, I had no dilemma with this guy. It was just like, we cannot do this, and he has to go.
Yeah.
So anyway, our artist tonight was chosen about 3 or 4 hours ago, which she's been on the list for a little while anyway.
She's been on the list, and she's very relevant right now because she's got some stuff going on.
She's got a show right now.
She's got a show right now. It just opened last Wednesday.
Yes. So what else for this week? Eddie Van Halen died.
Yeah.
Which I'm like, for those of you who have not seen it yet, Eddie Van Halen died today, which is tragic and heartbreaking. And
yeah, it's like part of our childhood.
Yeah.
Kind of went with it.
Yeah.
Yes, that happens.
So, and Ben will remember this. I think, Ben, I was at your house the first time I listened to Van Halen's Women and Children First, I think it was, or Van Halen 2 or 1. I can't remember, but that was
really something. Yeah.
That was some profound stuff we listened to back then. So rest in peace, Eddie Van Halen.
Yeah.
It's sad news. Okay, so another thing we were thinking about bringing to you that we've talked about and sort of laughed about is our bickering over the artists. And so when we go to pick an artist,
there's a little bit of a fueled discussion. And they're all good. All the artists that we pick out are good, but sometimes we talk about what would be interesting, because I don't think if one person likes the artist, the other person's going to point out why they don't like the artist, and I don't know if that's such a positive kind of show. I think that was one of the issues.
Well, I mean, I'm not necessarily saying that we should always have a show that doesn't include some kind of critical, influence of some sort. But we're never going to really bring on an artist that we want to tear apart, because that's not really what we're about.
Yeah.
We're really trying to be supportive in a lot of respects.
And basically talk about art and get people excited about art. And I think scrapping artists and duking it out, sometimes that's not the best way to do it.
I'm not really interested in having that kind of conversation right now. However, when we talk about it and we start to bring these things up, we're like, oh, how about this person? And you're like, no, I don't like that one. And so we have this kind of back and forth. So we were going to make an episode of our show specifically around the notion of our veto
process.
Yes, the veto process. And so we would come to the camera armed with our lists of artists and maybe some examples and say, this, yes, this, no, this, yeah, and actually let you guys weigh in.
Yeah.
And maybe possibly even decide an artist for a future show. And so we were thinking about doing this like once every 8 weeks or so, where we have like a good list of people to sort of choose from.
Yeah, because we go through quite a lot in the week. How many do you think we went through? About 6 of them, 7 of them just
at
this
least.
week
at
to
least.
talk about?
Yeah.
And you were crossing them off. And then some. The other interesting thing, and I overuse the word interesting a lot, but last night following Carla Knight was really hard, because you have to think of a good transition from artist to artist, because I didn't want to get right into somebody who is like neoclassic or anything like that. It just wasn't going to be a good fit. So I kind of had to think, and I think you were on board with this, like you want it to kind of flow really smoothly. And
yeah, for sure. I also have to point out in this, just to stray off topic for a little bit, I really, really liked doing Carla Knight last week. I thought she was fantastic. But on top of that, and because we've known her work, we know her work, but I thought the conversation that was going on in the chat and what we did
Yeah.
was really a lot of fun.
I
There was
agree.
a great energy in this.
There
So,
was.
you know,
Yeah.
so that was a good show. And I was a little worried about this week's show because of how,
We were
know.
following her. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 So, anyway, we're trying to make the continuity between artists. Last week was excellent. Thanks, Mom. It's good to have your mom on. That makes me feel good. My mom watches.
Yeah.
I love that. My mom's always been a fantastic supporter of me as an artist, which has always been, that's a big
has,
deal.
yeah.
Not everybody's that lucky.
Yeah.
Ben says, what? Dave says, still hot for teacher. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm still having trouble. I actually ran some
Processing
some Van Halen songs before we started tonight just to kind of listen, and I was like trying to think of what my favorite Van Halen song is.
Yeah. Well, you had pulled it up on Alexa.
Well, I pulled up one, but there's other ones. Like Diver Down had some instrumental pieces on there that I really liked, like little guitars, and I love Big Bad Billy because it's so different from everything they've ever done.
Yeah.
And of course, I like Dance the Night Away because that's just like a really cool older song.
I'm going to agree with Dave there on Still Hot for Teacher. I think that's my favorite.
Well,
Yeah.
okay. I mean, it's funny. I mean, I'm going to be honest. I think David Lee Roth is a bit of an ass.
Oh. Well,
We said we weren't going to tear anybody apart.
He's not known for. Okay.
Anyway,
Anyway.
moms are awesome, Memory Vessel. You are correct.
Okay.
Mom's like, I need to know the artist. I'm going
She's
crazy.
Like, quit with the small talk.
You're going to have to wait. You're going to have to wait.
Well,
Give
one
me
thing we
something to write
typically do, and I think Todd's gonna jump right into it.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, I just totally cut you off.
No, go ahead.
I'm terrible.
No, you're not.
So every week, we sort of want to talk about getting over your fear of talking about art or making art. And we've been reading a little bit from Jerry Saltz. And one of the things I like about the Jerry Saltz book is its accessibility. I've poured over a couple of other texts this week thinking of, given this week's artist, how can I kind of bring in some other information to talk about? And everything that I brought in was really deeply enmeshed in either, theory or philosophy or academia. And I'm just like, I just don't want to do it.
Yeah.
But Saltz, his book, really kind of has an entry point I think that a lot of people can connect with. And that's what I love about this. And I think that's a good core for this show. I got my old man lanyard on. All right, so this is going to be chapter 2 from Jerry Saltz's How to Be an Artist. The chapter is titled Imagination is More Important Than Knowledge. And that is a quote from Albert Einstein. The imagination is endless and always there. It's a lens, a tool that enlarges life, that animates your own Cambrian ocean of past, present, and potential future forms. It adds what Samuel Taylor Coleridge called gorgeous nonsense, making unreal things real and real things unreal. And that's a key focus of tonight's artist. Pledge allegiance to it, live up to it, honor it and listen to it, take pleasure in it. Let it be your magic lantern and flying carpet. Your imagination extends your mind to the world around you. It pressurizes, composes, decomposes, and connects thoughts. It's inseparable from you and will be with you on the day you die. The imagination is not a state, said William Blake. It is the human existence itself. Creativity is what you do with your imagination. Write down your flights of fancy, your moments of wonder and fear, your dreams and delusions of grandeur. Then put them to work. Make the imagination your compass star. And, I think given what we're talking about tonight and the artist we're talking about tonight, this is really fitting. And I love that line, making unreal things real and real things unreal. So that's tonight's passage. And I like that.
I like that too.
Thanks, Jerry.
Yeah.
Jerry, if you ever watch this on YouTube, come join us one night. I think it would be awesome
Yeah.
to have you in the chat.
I always think he's a good way to open it too. Yeah.
Eventually, we're going to run out of material in this book if we manage to stay on this long enough, but
Well, we'll see.
we'll see. Okay.
Go
Should we introduce? You're going to introduce tonight's artist, not me.
Oh, okay.
All right, I'm gonna let you do
well,
it.
we gave you a little bit of an introduction. She is a New York based artist. She has a current exhibit. It is at
Gladstone Gallery.
Gladstone Gallery. It opened last Wednesday, and it is going to be up until mid-November, around November 14th. So if you happen to get to New York City in the midst of COVID and you get out there, it's probably worth seeing. We're thinking about it. We'll see.
Yep.
But her name is Amy Sillman.
Yes, Amy Sillman. So let's take a look. I've got a little slideshow here of Amy Sillman's work, and we have a lot to kind of talk about tonight.
There's a lot of ground to cover.
I'm going to let you start.
Okay. Well, she has quite an impressive CV. She was educated at several institutions like Bard and School of Visual Arts. She also went to NYU. Her career is well over 25 years. I believe it's heading towards 30. She did have a retrospective back in 2013, I believe.
I believe that's correct. And can I just interrupt you for 1 second? I just want to recognize Lynn has followed, Pumpkin Audrey has followed, and Rita Samini has followed. So everybody, thank you for that.
Yes,
that gets us closer to tonight's 35 follower goal, where we're going to give away a book. Keep going. I'm sorry.
Oh, dear. Okay, so anyway, 2013, she had her 25-year retrospective. She is pretty much all over the place right now. She also curated an exhibit over at MoMA that had just ended several months ago. So I'm going to take it from there.
Well, I wanted to talk about Amy Sillman tonight simply because I want to talk about the notion of looking at art from the standpoint of abstraction, right? And Amy Sillman's paintings are stunning paintings to me. And, I could get into the nitty gritty with these paintings and talk about them from a formal standpoint or talk about them from how she works. And I'll make comments on that. But I really want to think about these from the standpoint of let's talk about looking at abstraction and what it means. We had Isaac Cordell, right? And Isaac Cordell was very we could easily enter his work because it's very familiar, right? Little figures in spaces. We can take apart the message that's present in them, and bam, we've got something. And then we moved on to Carla Knight, and Carla Knight was a little bit more diagrammatic, but there was still this notion of the recognizable in there. There was an organization around a grid structure in there.
There was lots of layers.
And we sort of felt that there was something to read there, even if we couldn't necessarily read it. And now we take one more leap into the unknown, a little bit further into the unknown at this point, and it becomes a little bit more difficult to, take apart for a lot of people. So, I mean, do you feel that way? Like when you look at a piece of abstract art?
I do. And she has predominantly been abstract in her whole career. There have been a couple of diversions here and there when you look. And that's usually, to me, one of the most compelling things about an artist is seeing how they progressed and seeing how they moved through time and space, which is a lot of what she capitalizes on. In her art, it's all about motion and time and space and mark making. And when she does do paintings, they're not stagnant things. She works on them for a long time. She puts layers down, then she removes them, then she takes pictures of them. And she ruminates on the idea for quite some time, and then she goes back into it, and then she adds more layers, and then she turns it, and she's constantly looking at this piece and seeing it metamorphose into something that she likes.
Right. But one thing I heard her say in one of her talks that I found to be really interesting is Amy Sillman does not consider herself to be a painter. She does not call herself a painter. She doesn't identify with that act. And she talks about it from a really interesting standpoint that I found I totally resonated with. She finds herself to be more of a drawer, which is a funny word to say.
That is a funny word to say.
But the act of drawing for her has, and she talked about that, she said that drawing is like grassroots thinking, where you're building on something from the ground up. You sort of don't come at it necessarily with a larger plan. And this slide that she had in her show, she was doing this presentation, and she had two slides up there. One was of a beaver with a stick in his mouth swimming in the water. And the second slide was of a pigeon looking down on a square where there were all these other pigeons. And there was this really beautiful geometric pattern in the stonework down there. And the pigeon looking down on the other pigeons was like the painter, right? Looking at things in terms of a plan. He was almost plotting from far above, looking down at his other pigeons as if he had something He was planning out. And then the geometry in the stone itself sort of suggested this larger design. Whereas the beaver is just swimming along with his tool, ready to go to work. He probably doesn't have a plan, and he builds almost organically, right? And so that's the function of drawing. Drawing is this direct connection that the hand makes to the brain, whereas painting has a much larger strategy. It's like chess, right? With chess, you don't want to play the game one move at a time and build upon it. You do to a degree, but you need a larger plan, where the better player is going to destroy you, and that's painting, right? So that was my thinking on that.
A lot of the images that we have put in the slideshow are from her current exhibit, which is up right now in New York City. This was quite a diversion from some of the other abstracts that did have these layers. She went with a more floral theme for this because this was in the midst of COVID too that she was painting, and she had said something about it was an area she wanted to explore in the midst of all of this madness, which is what I really appreciate.
Well, you know, it's funny, you brought up the floral thing with her, and we've got a couple of images on this slideshow of what she's doing that way. And it, you know, last year, I think it was last year, maybe a year and a half ago, I got together with a friend of mine who was a painter. His name is Larry McKim. And it says, Memory Vessel says, I like the number of images you're showing this week. Yeah, we're showing more this week than we did last week with Carla Knight, simply because we felt like we needed some more with Carla. That was a little thin. Yeah. But this has a nice variety. Were you going to say something?
No, I wasn't. I was going to say that we tried to get some diversity with her images too, and make sure that we had
a range.
There's some that we're missing that I'm going to go into later on that I absolutely adored, and you're like, no, I don't want to go there. And I was like, I really want these in there because it was such a great show that she did. But that's okay. We'll get into that in a little bit.
Okay. I probably should have put those in there, and there's a couple in here that I think do reflect upon that, those taxonomies you were talking about. But let's go back.
Okay.
So my friend Larry McKim, painter, and I got together last year to talk about maybe a little over a year ago actually, to talk about the possibility of curating a show together. And we know a lot of artists, and we were trying to talk about what we wanted to curate in you know, these times, and how we were feeling. And Larry had just started a body of work that was about flowers, and he was a really serious abstract painter who usually depicted much less recognizable things in his work, but all of a sudden started painting flowers. And it stunned me for a minute, knowing his work, but then knowing Larry and knowing his gentleness and his view on life and the way he approached things, it made sense. And I think he was a little bit tentative about approaching me about doing a show that was about botanicals. But I was so on board with that because my work also sort of reflects that. Memory Vessel's work reflects that,
for
right?
Sure.
So find Memory Vessel on Instagram and check out what she's doing. It's beautiful.
It is, especially your newest one, which I liked right away.
So a botanical show just seemed to make sense. And now to see Amy Sillman shifting out of this really, really deep and not unrecognizable, I hate to use that word, but this deep level of abstraction and coming into something familiar like botanicals and flowers feels right.
Yeah.
And Larry said that. Now, unfortunately, Larry passed away last year suddenly, and that was a shock, and I miss him dearly. And I don't think our art world has quite gotten over that yet. But anyway, that's a tragic loss. So let's get back to Amy for a second.
Yeah, sure. Well, we were saying that she was going down this path. Throughout her career, though, there were times where she's got a bit of a sense of humor. She was doing some cartoons. She played with some technology when that started. She's a little iPhone. She was using iMovie to animate some of her images for art shows, which was pretty creative, and just a lot of different things. She played quite a bit.
Right.
She didn't. She takes herself seriously, but she opens herself up to some risk too.
Well, I think the trick is not taking yourself too seriously. You have to take yourself seriously, right? But if you take yourself too seriously, you're going to lose out on opportunities to develop and grow.
Yeah.
Right? So let's just, I said I was going to talk a little bit about the notion of abstraction and what it means to sort of come to a painting like this. And, since a lot of us are talking about in this, so like one of my goals is to kind of talk about getting comfortable with talking about art and getting comfortable with looking at art. When we come to an abstract piece, oftentimes I find one of the questions I hear over and over again is, well, what is it? And I think we need to refrain from asking that question, because here's one thing to keep in mind when you approach a piece of abstract work, and that is the abstract painting is a thing unto itself. It does not necessarily always have to depict something else, okay? So think of the abstract painting as an object that is its own thing, right? Now, there's going to be, inevitably, elements of familiarity in there, and those are good, because as recognizable objects, recognizable shapes, things that can sort of draw you into what it is you're looking at, that's a jumping off point for you to sort of start to add.
Well, I think people are trying to connect with the art.
Of course.
And just like we're always looking for those connections, sometimes it brings back a memory or something that we can identify with, and sometimes we get attached to certain pieces that way. So I can understand doing that, but you're right, we shouldn't always be approaching art like it's got to mean something. It has to be face value, because there's a lot more going on into the pieces than meets the eye.
Right. And so now that you said that thing about memory, you made me think of something, and I'm going to get a little bit philosophical for a minute.
Okay.
All right, but I'm going to try and keep it. I'm going to try and connect it. All right, so bear with me on this one. Okay. When you're born, you don't know what you look like. Okay, you have no idea what the image of your face is. You are an entity moving through the world, and you see things, and everything to you is, in a sense, an image. In a sense, right? Because it's a reflection back light off of a thing that tells you that thing is there. Now, of course, you can reach out and touch that thing, right, and pick it up, and it becomes an object, but we see things through a projection on our retina. Now, when we first learn to understand what we look like, what our faces look like, it's in a mirror. You cannot see yourself. You cannot see yourself unless you look at it through a two-dimensional projected image. That means the very notion of you understanding who you are is through the notion of a two-dimensional image, okay? So, if that's the case, we learn to recognize our own identities and our own selves through two-dimensionality. Okay, now we'll fast forward a little bit. I got to rein it back in, right? If our world is made up of this recognition of things, meaning, connections, concepts, through that kind of two-dimensional projection, and that's how we understand our very selves, then when we come to a painting that does not necessarily have all of those things in it that we need to see, that we need to recognize, that we need to make sense of out of in the world, we find ourselves, if we're not used to doing this, we find ourselves confused, right? We're like, what is it? Why am I looking at this? What is this thing? Because we're used to understanding things through projected images that we understand. So what we first have to do in order to look at abstract art is have a willingness to look at it, a willingness to view it, and to say to ourselves, I don't need that connection right now. I'm here for a different reason. I am here because I want to have a higher level of seeing, a higher level of attunement to this thing, and I'm going to give myself permission to do that. And once you do that, now the doors begin to open. I'm going to stop talking philosophically now and drink my beer. The show is yours.
Okay. Well, I think you have some good points. Definitely. Have you ever gone to an art museum with maybe someone who didn't, like it was one of their first times seeing something a little abstract or...
Of course.
Right.
I'm a teacher.
Of course.
Of course.
Of course.
And that's how I explain it to them.
Yeah.
You know, Ben says, I see an elephant in one design, the one with the gray color. Right. And, you know, I think that level of entry into this is a good way to sort of say to yourself, all right, I'm there. I'm in it. I'm looking at it. I see something in it.
It's like looking at clouds sometimes when clouds go by.
Oh, and you want to find that image in the cloud.
Well, you can appreciate the cloud for what it is. And some people want to find images in the clouds. it's either or.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think the more time you spend with the cloud, right, the possibility of not being so interested in the fact that the cloud looks like a hamster and thinking about the very volume and potential
the colors,
and the
shading,
light and all of those things that exist in the cloud that are not pictorial.
Right. And all those things do come into play when we're looking at abstract art, because even when you're looking at Amy Sillman, like one of the things that drew me to her was her composition, the balance in the compositions, and her use of color. The one that's up on the screen right now, that one's about the texture comparison too, because that one's got a lot of texture going on in it.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I love about the act of abstract painting, and I paint, okay? So, and when I am moving, when I'm ideating means the act of generating ideas, and I could get into a whole thing about the notion of thinking and the idea and all that, and I'll probably do that a little bit in this show, but we can do a whole show on that. But when I'm trying to develop ideas and I'm working abstractly, I will reveal things, right? So the mark itself, making the mark on paper, making the brush stroke on the canvas, will reveal a thing that was not there before. And the act of abstract painting reveals that which we might not ever see. And so when we come to a painting like this one that's on the screen right now, or, well, we'll talk about that taxonomy that you guys can see at this moment, but when we look at a composition of forms and lines and color and value and all of these elements brought together in space, we are presented with a thing that was revealed that was not there before. It did not have a place in the world before. And that's an exciting thing, right? When I was in undergraduate school, there was a woman in my class who always saw a chicken in the painting. I see a chicken. We would all laugh hysterically at her. She didn't understand why, but she always wanted to see a chicken.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Gail, if you're out there listening to me, I'm sorry for ratting you out on your constantly seeing chickens. But here's the thing, right? Is it's okay to see the chicken, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with seeing the chicken, but what about the potential for that thing that was never there before? There's the flowers on the screen right now.
Yes. And actually, I wanted to talk about that one in comparison to the earlier slide that we saw with the taxonomy and the pictures all over the room, because that was with this floral theme that she's got going on. I felt like she loosened up even more. So abstract to me sometimes can be very loose in terms of she wasn't committing to anything. She kept remodeling it as she went. She lived with the images. She changed the image. It was this constant evolving process. And with the florals and even the way that she hung them in this latest show is a little bit looser than the taxonomy that we saw in earlier shows.
Yeah. Like no grids.
Yeah, like I know her Transformer show, and then I can't remember which one that one was from, but she had several taxonomies that were just mind-blowing. You went into the room, it was wall-to-wall drawings.
Hung in a grid.
And same palettes.
And I also noticed
dark lines.
There seemed to be a progression.
There was a progression.
As if the ideas, it was generative, right? So she was kind of working through an idea one after another, and she hung them in the order that they were developed in.
Yes.
Which is another interesting reflection on her thought process, right? And seeing how she thinks.
Right.
Amanda Tulin asks, are these on paper? Not all of them.
Not all of them.
So most of the single images that you're seeing, like the one on the screen right now, these are actually very large stretched canvases. There are some exceptions.
There are. Some of the florals were done on paper for her latest show.
Yeah. And that big gridded taxonomy in that one room where you're looking at hundreds of pieces, those are all on paper.
Now she pretty much works large. Like she has some that are like a standard size, but for the most part they're 6 feet by 5 feet on the wall.
Right.
Sometimes in certain shows she lines them one right next to each other, like the show she did in Camden, New Jersey a couple of years ago.
Yep.
It was just straightforward a progression. She was trying to equate it to a telephone line, and it was these massive paintings right next to each other, but what she was talking about was communication and the loss of communication. She could remember being down on the floor talking on the phone with the little coiled telephone, and she was trying to make a connection with that. But
So mom asks, are these oils or pastels or what?
there's mixed media going on. There's some, she likes to work on linen with some of them. She'll do like an acrylic background and then she'll go over it with oil. She doesn't really adhere to any particular medium. I think it was, she was mixing the paints around.
Right. She's willing to kind of move through a variety of materials. And I mean, I can understand that. Like when I bust out materials to actually work, I throw everything on the table because I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to want.
Well, that's part of the exploration, I think, too. That's part of the process for her.
It's also part of the drawing mentality, because if you're going to function in a way with drawing's immediacy, then you want your collection of materials to be at the ready so that when the desire comes to pull something out and use it, it's there. A funny story, when I was in graduate school for sculpture at RISD, we had my instructor, my mentor, my graduate advisor was, we were walking together one day, and I said to him, I said, you know, it's funny, all the sculpture students are on the 3rd and 4th floor of this studio building, and what do? In our recreational time, we play ping pong, we throw darts, like we played a lot of very physical things, right? But if you went down to floors 2 and 3, or we were on 4 and 5, I don't remember, but the lower 2 floors were the painters. And in their crit space, they had these long folding tables set up, and there were like 12 chessboards. And you'd go down there, and all the painters are smoking cigarettes and moving chess pieces. And I'm like, we're upstairs beating the crap out of each other. And it should have been obvious to me, given the nature of what we all did. But he made it very clear. And I think this relates here. He said, with painting, it is basically you have your materials and you have your surface. And from that point on, it is a head game, right? It's a visual game, it's a head game. You're working on that surface and things are defined. Even the edges of the canvas are defined, right? And I forget who it was that said that. I think it was actually Jerry Saltz that said that, is we already know what it's going to look like before you even set out to make it, because there are some prescribed sort of parameters here, right? So anyway, he's like, for them, it's a head game. And chess is like that. You've got your pieces, you've got your board, and now it's all up here, and it's a plan. And I mentioned that earlier with the chess thing earlier. With sculptors, it's a very different world in that the world of, you know, I tell people say, what do you do? I'm like, oh, I'm an artist. Oh, what medium? And I'm like, well, it doesn't really work like that anymore. And they're like, well, like, do you do stone? You're a sculptor. You do stone, you do wood, you do metal? No, I do everything. And the reason is different problems call for different things. And so I'm sorry, I'm totally dominating here.
No, I agree.
But when a sculptor makes work, it's like this whole other level of exploration of understanding the limitations of materials, understanding, you know, the limitations of how connections are made and how things go together. And you don't have time to necessarily always stay in your head, because the physicality of it is so much more needy, right? And so that's why we were playing ping pong. That's why we were throwing darts. That's why we were, you know, like physically brawling on some level, because there's this real need to understand physical limitations. And so in this work, in this painting here, I really enjoy the way that she kind of pushes that head game to its farthest limits. And she kind of goes deep into the different requirements for that two-dimensionality and allowing everything to be on the table.
Yeah.
I'm going to stop talking.
Oh, okay.
It's your turn.
All right. Well, again, I think it's important to explore different mediums as an artist. I find that I have a lot of respect. It's all part of the process to me, like the exploration of materials, the exploration of themes. With her, she did all of that. One of my favorite pieces that she actually did was thrown together over a span of time, because it did need some time to do it. But she was trying to get ready for a show, and she was trying to think of the piece that she wanted to do, and then she had this artist group, this group of people that she really connected with, and they all couldn't be there. I might get the story wrong a little bit, but she wanted them all represented. So she did this grid, a taxonomy of these really fascinating portraits, where she went over to everybody's house and she painted a portrait of everybody on paper, and she hung it in a grid, and it was mind-blowing. And she went there, she kind of thought, a little bit off the beaten path. She did use different mediums for that too. I think she might have used a little bit of watercolor, but I might be wrong on that one. But she explored that path too. She didn't back away from something that wasn't her genre or anything. She went ahead and she's like, I'm going to do portraits. I'm going to do cartoons. I'm going to do abstract. And she was playful. And I find that that's a very well-developed artist.
Well, it's also inspiring from the standpoint of where we all come from. I mean, if you want to go home and make drawings right now, there's no pressure for you to be one thing. You can work in a way that feels right for you and just get down to business.
Yeah. Now, when I think of the artists that we had been thinking about doing, that I was really upset that we didn't do, he did the same thing. He really didn't... Memory Vessel saying, I like this one. Which one is that?
Well, no, what she's saying is, Amanda Toulon said before her, it's interesting that they are large scale, but the line weights read like marker lines. And then I think Memory Vessel's responding to that saying, like this one, which was the one that was predominantly yellows and softer tones with a heavier, blacker line weight in it. And I agree.
Was it the one with the vertical lines? I missed it.
When it pops back up, I'll mention it. But yeah, there is, there's this really... I think what really stands out for me in these is the way the diffusion contrasts really nicely with the sharper line work and how those various layers, those various sort of contrasts in there, take that flat space that we start out with as a canvas and begin to add a sense of form, right? They begin to add a sense of depth. They begin to add a sense of dimensionality. All of that stuff begins to appear because of the way those things stand. Like in this one, there's that red line on that right side of the painting that sits on top of that darker black, on top of that green, creates that dimensional hole that goes up inside the space.
Yep, and even the texture with the greens, the way she layers those greens gives you that sense.
And there's a softness on top, right? And so that allows this channel to appear there, which is really quite good. Now, I just want to point out that there are 9 minutes left in this show, and we're at 28 followers. Now, we said
we're so
35.
Close. Grab your friends. We
grab
just
your
need
friends
7,
to come
and then
and
somebody
follow.
can win a book.
You're going to win Jerry Saltz's book tonight if you get your friends to sign up. So get them on here. If we have to run the show a little bit longer, we can, so that we can give away a book, right? This book will do you well, right? Do you good? Do you well? Do you good? I think it's going to.
You'll
it's
really
a great
like
book.
it.
You're going to like this book. This beer is 8% tonight, so it's a little lower than last week's.
We should do a giveaway where we give away beer.
How can we give away beer?
We can't give away beer.
I'm going to bet any amount of money that Official Poop Sock is underage.
I'm going to
No adult
bet
would give
that
themselves
you're
that screen
right.
name.
Yeah, I'm going to bet you're right.
Anyway, maybe one would. So let's see if we get a few more followers in here tonight. So, I have to say this. I got called out by Ben. He's watching right now. He called me out because he is a religious watcher of our streams. And he's with me on Sundays. He's with me on Sundays when I'm drawing live on Twitch. And this week, for some reason,
It could happen to anybody.
My brain wasn't functioning, and I said, it's Saturday morning at 10. I've got to do my drawing stream on Twitch. And so I got all my materials out. I fired up the cameras, launched the thing, and drew for 2 hours. And thank you, Amanda, for showing up for that. And I thought it was funny that no one else came. And so I rewarded Amanda for her loyalty by making her a moderator. Watch out. She'll kick you out of the room if you're not careful. But Ben said to me a little later on, he's like, I'm sorry, I missed the show. I thought it was on Sundays. And I'm like, no, it's on Saturdays. I'm really revealing what a complete scatterbrain I can be sometimes.
Well, there's a lot going on right now.
But Ben was right. It's Sundays.
Sundays.
So I screwed that up, and I promise not to do that again. Sundays at 10 a.m. I will be drawing here. And eventually giving some of those drawings away. So that can be fun.
That could be fun.
But it doesn't look like, there are some people up there in that chat list that I don't think are followers. Yeah, Ben, you're laughing at me. I know. It's okay. I'm used to it. I see some people up there that might not be followers, but if you follow, you could get us to 35. You could get us to 35 tonight. We only need a few more. Okay, we're at 28. 7 minutes to go. So let's talk a little bit more about Amy Sillman.
Yeah.
We are going to post, when we post tonight's episode on YouTube, I'm going to include links to Amy Sillman's website.
And also maybe the gallery that she's featured
The Gladstone Gallery Show. By the way, that gallery show is on until November 14th. Gladstone Gallery is on 24th Street. I believe it's 515 West 24th Street, which is in Chelsea. If you're in the city during the pandemic. This one, yes. This one here, I think, is either one. They're both that yellow with that heavy black line, and I think they work in that regard.
This one is in her newest show, and this one we put up because it did I like the abstraction, but you can see those botanical elements in some of her mark making.
Yeah, and here's another example of that. I don't think this one's as strong as the other ones in terms of how that line functions. I mean, there's definitely a really nicely layered contrast between the line and this diffused kind of translucent kind of layering going on behind it. But somehow this one doesn't feel as strong to me as the others. It's a little bit less. I like this one, right? I feel like this one has, a real subtle sense of depth going on in it. And there's this kind of form that explodes. I mean, I find that triangular form to the left to be mildly figurative, and this thing explodes out of it on the right-hand side, almost like this kind of extension of the body, this like thing that has gravity. But Ben says, no, man, a lot going on right now. Yeah, I'll say there's a lot going on right now. So if you're in the city and you can get to see this show, the art critic Ken Johnson, he's not a critic so much. Yeah, he is a critic. He writes for the Times, I believe. He had mentioned that there's something very, very satisfying about seeing these paintings close up because there's a lot to see in the actual detail.
Well, I would think the scale, too, would probably knock your socks off a little bit, although that's not the primary thing. But I would love to see these up close just to be right in front of them and really take it all in. Right,
and also because of the way that brush sort of drags that paint across the canvas, the way the various colors interact on a very sort of micro scale in a close sort of proximity. I mean, those are going to be really revealing things when you get in close. So there's definitely something. I mean, seeing this slideshow is not where this ends. I mean, if it's possible to see this work ever in person, that's definitely the way to go. And Memory Vessel has followed. Wait a minute. You weren't a follower, Memory Vessel?
Thank you for following.
Thanks for following. Thank you for following. All right, good. We got another one in there. So we're at 29. I have a funny story about how paint and that kind of physicality of the paint and that allure of seeing the paint in the gallery. One of my best friends who accompanied me to a little Chelsea gallery run. Don't feel bad. That emoji is totally not necessary. You're here. You're with us. That's what really, we love that. Anyway, I took a friend of mine to a little Saturday afternoon of Chelsea gallery hunting, and there was a Terry Winters painting show. We might do Terry Winters on this show. Anyway, these canvases were gargantuan, and they were this sort of linear extravaganza of grid works and volumes, almost like roller coaster frameworks in space with incredible color choices. And I swear to God, this guy paints with the physical tube of paint itself. There's so much paint on the canvas that you want to eat these things. They're just so physical, right? And so we're in this gallery. I think there were 6 paintings because they're so big, right? And he and I were the only 2 people in the gallery, and he's down the wall looking at one, and I'm standing here looking at another. And the gallerina, the attendant, gallerina, I'm sorry, I make myself laugh. The gallery attendant was sitting behind a desk with a book, or I don't know, a phone, scrolling. And I looked over just in time to see him, like 20 feet away, putting out his finger at this globule of dried paint and about to pluck it. Like he put his finger over the ball of paint, like he wanted to pluck it off the canvas. And he's not like a gallery person, right? He has no idea that doing this is like, I think he fully expected to pick this paint booger off the canvas and stick it in his pocket. So I have like a coronary, like I go running down there. I'm like, no, like, Jesus, this is $600,000 paintings. and who cares how much they cost? You don't deface a painting.
Yeah, you don't touch
right?
the art. Yep.
And I just, like, my head blew off for a minute. I was like, and the gallerina for a moment, like, put her book down to look to see, like, why this guy was running across the gallery to this other guy to see what the hell was going on. But here's the reason I'm telling this story. Yes, it's a funny story, but here's the reason. It's because sometimes that experience of physically seeing that paint is so
luscious and tantalizing. I know.
Yeah, there's an allure there that's just fabulous.
Well, that's true. I went to a show probably about a year ago in New York City with Holly Coulis.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God. And her colors are juicy. But the flatness of her paint was something to marvel at.
Yeah.
And it was the same thing. Like, sometimes you have to be up close to see how the artist actually handles these materials.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't translate on a screen. And honestly, she just gave away another artist on our list over there. And, Holly Coulis is one of those ones where we're a little bit afraid. Ben's like, what? Really? Are you talking about the story I just told with the booger? The paint booger? Possibly. That actually happened. He didn't get it off the painting. He didn't pull it off, but it was close. But the Holly Coulis thing, that's a really good point about that flatness, because it's not necessarily always about this kind of dimensional texture. It can also be about the allure of the way paint is used in a subtle fashion.
Yeah, I think getting up close to the artist's works and seeing how they've, how it's actually on. Because we're looking at this as a two-dimensional representation of what it really is, like a two-dimensional representation of another two-dimensional piece of artwork.
Right.
So it loses something in the translation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And while, I love the fact that you can go into the Met Museum and look at high-definition scans of their entire collection, which is a brilliant thing. Yeah. It's still not the real work.
Thing. Yeah.
Ben says you can't help yourself sometimes. Yes. Yeah. No, that's true. That's true. And honestly, I'm going to even say that that's the point, right? That's probably why Terry Winters is working in that way, because he has the same connection to the physicality of that paint that we have when we go and see it, right? And there's something really beautiful about that shiny globule sticking up off the canvas. Not only how it relates to the image and what it says about what, this picture is trying to say, but also about it's just so delicious, right?
Yeah.
Amanda says you can also feel the scale physical gesture of the mark making.
Yeah, that's something else to think about, because it could be that, or a lot gets translated in the scale of the actual gesture,
the body.
And when you look at that too, emotion comes through, like the artist's emotion when they were painting it. Sometimes you can really feel energy and what the artist was feeling just by being close to the artwork. I mean,
and that's one of the points right there, is that when you're physically standing in front of one of these pieces, and I find that a lot of people that have a hard time articulating this stuff, and articulating is a bad word, because don't feel the pressure to always necessarily talk about the work, but if you're not standing in front of the piece, it's hard to feel what is going on in that piece, especially if it's shrunken down to, like, I'm looking at that over there right now, and that's 2.5 inches by 2.5 inches in front of me, and I know we're not even close.
No.
Right? That volume right there, that green volume, is going to suck me in and repel me at the same time. This almost feels like I'm looking down a very, very long way, as if I'm standing on the high dive looking over something. Like there's like a verticality to this that you don't necessarily feel at first. But there's a closeness to those forms in the bottom of the field.
Well, this one actually gives me the context of a place. Like I feel some element of sea or something. Sometimes it can actually transport you a little bit into another environment.
Yeah. So, well, it is after 9.
Okay.
We did not hit our goal, guys.
But that's okay.
But I'm going to make you an offer. All right, I'm going to make you an offer. Since we probably have to go, and you guys usually know that we get off at 9, and I'm watching the viewer count drop like a rock, here's what we're going to do. Go tell your friends about this show. Get them to sign up. Now, next week's show, we're going to up that 35 count to 40. But if we get to 40 viewers on next week's show, we're going to give away that book. And I'm going to tell you right now, on the show that we get to 50 viewers, I'm giving away a drawing. Okay, so there's going to be a book at 40 and a drawing at 50. And I mean, that's a pretty good incentive. And all you got to do is follow. It doesn't cost you anything.
Just hang out, follow, grab your drink, talk about art.
Grab your drink,
good stuff.
talk about art.
What else are you going to do on a Tuesday night?
And Dave is still going for hot for teacher. My homework was never quite like this. My homework was always like this, at least ever since I left high school. So, so I appreciate all of those Eddie Van Halen lyrics. I don't know if he wrote the song. He wrote the songs.
Did he write the songs?
Barry Manilow wrote the songs. Sorry. You guys will never watch again after I said that. I'm sorry. And for those of you that are too young, you probably don't even realize what I just said. Anyway, I digress. Oh, Dave got nailed for spamming all caps. Be careful. We know that David Lee Roth yells class dismissed.
Wow.
Anyway, do me a favor. Come watch me draw on Sunday morning at 10. We can hang out. We can chat. I know Amanda will be there because she's loyal. And I know Ben will be there because he's loyal. And some of you probably have other things to do. But keep in mind, next week, 40 people follow. We give away a book. The week after that, if we get to 50, there's a drawing in the mix for everybody.
Yeah, and if you have a chance, go see Amy Sillman. She's
Yes.
up there until November 14th at the Gladstone Gallery in Chelsea.
Ben's going to promote. Thank you, Ben. I hope you guys really had a good time tonight at the show. We really, really appreciate Amy Sillman's work. We appreciate who she is as an artist. We're thankful that she's out there working.
Yeah.
And Memory Vessel's like, Sunday, yes. She was probably looking for me on Sunday, and I wasn't there because I already drew on Saturday.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Maybe you could do Saturday and Sunday.
Maybe I just should only drink on Tuesday.
Maybe you should.
Okay. Anyway, everybody, we love you. Thank you very much for hanging out and watching our show.
Yeah, and we'll see you next time.
We'll see you next time. Take care, everybody.
Bye.